Hello and welcome back to Everything Sucks for Everybody, the video game. We left off last time with pretty much everyone I liked. Oh, and if you're stumbling upon this video out of context, Danganronpa spoilers are going to be coming at you hard and fast, dog. We left off last time with pretty much everybody that I truly cared about in this game dying, so I thought it would be a good a time as any to take a look at the Danganronpa Power Rankings. At the top of the tiers here, we have ourselves the lovely athlete, Hina. Having proven time and time again to be a good-natured person who's hardworking and motivated, if a little stupid at times, she's cool. Next up, we have Byakuya, because he's not stupid and he's openly evil about things, but still tags along with the game and helps solve crimes sometimes, that he may or may not have made more confusing to solve in the first place, but my point still stands. Dude's a wild card, an asshole, and he'll probably be the biggest antagonist besides the bear himself in the end, but he's fun to have around. Then we have a bunch of characters that are all fine enough, but not that likable or interesting. Kyoko's helpful and certainly not annoying, but she's too mysterious and detached from the actual situation everyone else is in to be empathetic, I think. She feels like a walking tutorial and a ticking time bomb of, I'm actually the most important character because X, that the story will revolve around in the final chapters. Then we got, this guy. I don't even remember his name, to be honest. He's done like -3 things since the story started. Seems like a chill enough guy though, and he doesn't get in the way of anything, so... Celeste seems to actually be kind of smart, or at least competent, but she's also neutral enough to want to keep it to herself. She has potential to be interesting, but who knows. Sakura is actually a pretty respectable person with strong morals and loyalty to her friends, but she also feels kind of off. Just kind of devoid of any real personality traits to really stand out as a person. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe she should be higher. Taka is mostly obnoxious, and he doesn't really do anything either. If he'd taken the initiative and contributed more to the group, like how he did in the beginning by proposing everyone meet for breakfast to keep tabs on everyone else, then that would be a different story. Also, the dude got way too attached to Mondo after only like one activity together, and has been acting like they were soulmates ever since then, even though he's supposed to be the ultimate moral compass, and Mondo kind of murdered an innocent person? Like I said, obnoxious. Toko is annoying, and her split killer personality thing is just weird and not really my cup of tea. Hifumi is annoying. He's just the loser character. You're a loser, Hifumi. And that's where we're at going into chapter 3. And I've got to be honest, I thought this chapter was actually straight up kind of bad. We open up the chapter with Hina heading to the kitchen for a midnight snack to distract her from the fact that she's freaking trapped in a school by a goddamn teddy bear that's encouraging everything to kill each other, when she hears a ghostly sound. Investigating it, she finds the floating face of the deceased Chihiro in a locker, which spooks her. The next day, she tells everyone about it, prompting the rest of the cast to explore the area for themselves, and they stumble upon a laptop that was secretly being used by Chihiro before his demise. Being the ultimate programmer, he designed a ridiculously good AI that has to be just a few lines of code away from starting the singularity, and is so intelligent that it might as well be an official revival of his character. Chihiro 2.0, known as Alter Ego, has a bunch of files that probably relate to the history of the school or something, and he's trying to hack them open. The whole situation is pretty damn vague and gives me the feeling that the writer of this story has either very little knowledge or very little interest in computers. But anyway, Alter Ego's just been chilling in the locker room for a while, decrypting those files, so the gang decides to just continue to let him chip away at that. Hifumi instantly falls in love with Alter Ego because he's the loser character, while at about the same time Taka develops an obsession with Mondo and the computer by extension because Alter Ego simulated what it thought a pep talk from Mondo would sound like. So now Taka has fused personalities with Mondo because he gets attached to people way too easily. His idea of a middle ground between him and Mondo is pretty funny though. This causes him and Hifumi to feud over the laptop like the idiots that they are. It's explained that the locker room where the laptop has been stored is the only room in the school without cameras in it, which is pretty convenient and seems like kind of an unbelievable oversight on the part of Monokuma, which I think makes it likely that he's probably bluffing about not knowing what the students have been up to there. On top of all this happening, the third floor of the school has become accessible, so I guess we're getting a floor per chapter at this rate. This one's got a fancy art room that I'm 99% certain somebody is going to die in, a rec room, and a physics lab, which seems extremely out of place, but there might be a reason for that. It's kind of implied that maybe the entire outside world is destroyed or something. At one point, Monokuma says that he couldn't add new editions of magazines to the rec room even if he wanted to. And now in here, he explains that this giant-ass machine in the center of the room is an air purifier that can produce breathable air pretty much anywhere. And it's the reason that all of the characters have air to breathe. I quickly lost focus on this idea and this conspiracy though, because it was time to figure out who to date, baby! I had lots of choices here, but I went with more of a shotgun approach this chapter so that the game couldn't just kill off whoever I decided to spend the most time with. So first I went to see if I could ever even hang out with Byakuya at all, and surprisingly you can. Dude's a pretty nice guy once you get to know him, really. Then I hung out with Hina because she's nice and a little bit suicidal maybe, so she could probably use a little faith in humanity and a good friend. Kyoko, because if anyone is going to be the key to winning this game or anything like that, it's Kyoko. And then Celeste, because why not? And fun fact from talking to her, did you know that the ultimate strategy to being a gambling master is being lucky? Well, hot damn, I didn't mean to underestimate you earlier when I said you only seemed smart, Celeste. You're clearly on another level, dude, whoa. But enough of this silly people possessing a modicum of happiness nonsense. It's about time we get to another murder, wouldn't you say? The series of events here are pretty long and convoluted, but you wake up to find only 3 people in the dining hall: Kyoko, Hina, and Sakura. Everyone waits for an hour to see if anybody else shows up, but nobody does, and at this point you all decide to split up and try to find the other students. You stumble on Celeste in the rec room on the 3rd floor, who's been attacked by Robo-Justice, and she has a photo of the same student assailant dragging away Hifumi, who you find shortly afterwards with a wound but still alive. You've also grouped up with Byakuya and Toko at this point, who are just kinda hanging out elsewhere, I guess. Down in the nurse's office, Hifumi is ultimately fine, but Celeste sees a shadowy figure creeping up the stairs back to the 2nd floor. Everyone splits up to look for the culprit when Celeste is heard screaming from up on the 3rd floor. She saw the mysterious figure flee towards the end of the hall, but then everyone hears Hifumi screaming from on the 1st floor. So, Celeste suggests that they split up into 2 groups to catch both the attacker and check on Hifumi at once. Being part of the latter group, you arrive to find that he's been killed. While looking for the other group to tell them what's happened, you find that Taka has been murdered as well. Then, Celeste shows up to tell everybody that Hifumi's body disappeared, so everybody heads back down to the 1st floor nurse's office to confirm that. Then, once there, they realize that they left Toko, who faints at the sight of blood, unconscious at the scene of Taka's death, so they all rush back up there, only to find that now Taka's body has vanished as well. So now, everybody scatters to look for the bodies, eventually finding them in the art room's repository. So, this is all pretty silly, but on top of those wacky shenanigans, there may have been something about this situation that stuck out in your mind. And that's that if you pay very close attention, you might notice that Celeste is the killer. She's responsible for the whole goddamn thing. It's so obvious from just about the very beginning. The whole situation is so convoluted that instead of even trying to entertain the idea that all of these events happened by chance, I'm just over here looking at Celeste like she's normally so uninvolved and uninterested in anything going on that when she suddenly starts taking the initiative in the group by telling everybody what to do and suggesting they split up here or go there, not to mention that she just so happens to be the only one to see this shadowy figure throughout the school like 3 times in a row, it just screams, "Hello, I'm faking all of this and I suck at planning out murders." The fact that all of the bodies start vanishing and teleporting around more than my car keys do seems to complicate things at first, but a small detail is pretty quickly pointed out that makes the conclusion a lot more apparent. Between Hifumi being found dead on the 1st floor and being found dead on the 3rd floor, his glasses were cleaned. Originally they're totally bloodstained, but the second time you find him dead they are completely clear, and on top of that you find a bloody glasses cloth cleaner thing with a moe character design on it in the trash of the nurse's office when his body originally belonged. If this wasn't enough, the characters mention over and over again how it would be completely impossible for somebody to move his rather large body up 2 flights of stairs in such a short amount of time. So yes, the obvious conclusion then is that he was probably moving himself, and Celeste was probably orchestrating the entire scenario, especially because the two had formed a bit of a relationship over the course of the game. Now, I really appreciate how Danganronpa gives the player all of the information necessary to solve the murders on their own before the characters flat out explain what happened. One major sign that a mystery or twist-heavy story is badly written is when you aren't even given enough pieces of the puzzle to be able to figure anything out on your own, even if you would have been perceptive enough to normally. In other words, it's cheap and unsatisfying and bad if you just pull a plot twist or some intense revelation out of your ass without warning or build up and expect your audience to be impressed. The best stories like this are so cool because they give you so many little hints and so many chances to notice that something is not quite right while managing to keep you from figuring everything out, even though the answer was right in front of you the whole time. And if you've ever seen a film analysis video on YouTube or a film essay, I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times, so I won't go on about this. But the thing about this chapter is that it has the opposite problem of all those bad mystery stories. It does have the answers in plain sight. Just way too much in plain sight, though. You have characters pretty much just straight up saying what happened early on in the investigation, and yet you still have to go through the whole routine of everyone in the trial being like, but how could that possibly have been the case? And then your character's like, I don't know, man, I just feel like something's not quite right here. And then you point out the most obvious detail in the world that, again, your character practically already said earlier, and then the game's like, whoa, who could have ever seen that coming? Wow! And these trial sections are so long, dude. These things can last like 2 hours, so it can be a pretty tiring experience when you already know all of the answers and are just waiting for the characters to be shocked and amazed at each one in turn. It feels a lot like watching an episode of Dora the Explorer as an adult, only, again, 2 hours long. But you can certainly still coast along for the ride, just enjoying the characters' reactions, interactions, and insight, and you can enjoy seeing just what the crazy circumstances of the killing will be this time. It's not necessarily a deal breaker for plenty of people, I'm sure, if you have a case that's just too easy to solve. Thing is, for me, that on top of the case being way too easy for me to solve, it also just didn't make sense to me. And maybe Celeste is supposed to be an idiot, but her plan, once you take a step back and review it from top to bottom, is so impractical that you're just left kind of dumbfounded. The big picture of the case is this. Celeste approaches Hifumi with a lie and a proposal. She claims that Taka was evil and abusive towards her and that he wanted the laptop that Hifumi was in love with all for himself. She suggests that they kill him and somebody else, one kill for each of them, so that they can both be released from the school as the winners of the game or whatever. In actuality though, she's planning on just killing Hifumi and using the death of Taka to complicate the nature of the whole event to obscure her involvement. Towards the end of this plan, the two even drug somebody, Hiro. Yeah, remember him? He exists. Then stuff him in a cumbersome robot suit so that they can take pictures and frame him for everything, leaving him unconscious in a locker to be found by everybody else. The two kill Taka, pretend to be attacked themselves, lead the rest of the students around on a wild goose chase while Hifumi fakes being killed by dumping a bunch of blood from the nurse's office on himself and playing dead. The students split up and discover the bodies of both Taka and Hifumi at the same time, but are distracted enough by other things that Hifumi has a chance to get up without being seen, go collect Taka's body, again without being seen, transport to a third location without being seen, ultimately to be killed by Celeste, without being seen. I'm about to bring up some details of this case that I haven't mentioned until now, so you might be a little confused if you aren't familiar with this game already, but just take my word for it that these are important examples of Celeste's ineptitude at planning crimes. And yes, I know I'm talking about this a lot. Screw it, I'm renaming this video Everything Wrong with Celeste's Specific Plan to Murder Somebody and Get Away With It in Chapter 3 of Danganronpa Happy Havoc. It'll be great, I'm sure the video is going to do really well, really kick off my channel. Please keep an eye out for it on the trending page. Alright, Celeste, my questions to you are, what would you have done if anybody noticed that Hifumi didn't have any wounds when he was attacked the first time? Anyone had decided to stay with Hifumi afterwards to make sure he was safe? The group refused to split apart from you so that you could pretend to see the assailant. Anybody noticed that Hifumi didn't have any wounds when he was attacked the second time and killed? Anyone had decided to check his pulse or breathing when he was dead? Anyone discovering the body of Taka before you planned for them to? Not enough people were around or wanted to try and chase a murderer so that they would discover Taka's body when you wanted them to trigger the body found announcement. Anyone insisted on staying with Hifumi's body after he was found dead? Anybody insisted on staying with Taka's body after he was found dead? Probably a ton of other stuff too, but I can't talk about this forever. You just can't rely on 6 other people whom you barely even know to react a certain way, and you're an idiot, and this whole chapter is so dumb, okay? I said it. I could go on. I could probably turn my whole channel into a Danganronpa Chapter 3 discussion channel, but I feel like I've said enough for now. Of course, the player reveals what really happened. Celeste is outed as the mastermind behind everything and subsequently executed. After the trial, Kyoko kind of reveals what she was up to during the whole fiasco as she disappeared for most of it. She tells you to investigate the closet of one of the bathrooms, and there you find a hidden passageway to some weird room where you stumble on a student registry for the school and a note that says, "You must not leave." You're then attacked and knocked out by somebody, and when you regain consciousness, the room has been completely looted. Finally, on your way back to your dorm room, you come across Sakura and Monokuma fighting each other, where Sakura reveals that she refuses to spy on the group for Monokuma anymore. So, you know, that's probably significant. Alright, that wraps up Chapter 3. A lot of more serious complaining talk going on around here, so here's a picture of Hiro getting his burger beamed up by aliens. You can make a joke about that if you want to kind of mix things up. Look at this, it's so silly. Like, what's even going on here? How could anyone take this story seriously? You're such a character, Hiro. Is that good? Have we, awesome. Alright, Chapter 4 pretty quickly develops the secret spy plot thread and turns it into the focal point of the story for a little bit. Monokuma informs the rest of the cast that Sakura is a spy because he's grumpy at her for saying that she would defy him. I'm not even really sure what spying on the group could really do, since there are already cameras in almost every room of the school, so maybe they're implying that Sakura has or is supposed to be divulging the secrets going on in the bath locker room with the laptop, alter ego, and everything. You know, because there'd be no way to figure out that anything suspicious was going on there at all. No siree. Although everybody is now aware of their hostile relationship, the knowledge of Sakura's spyhood still puts most of the group on edge, which causes a lot of friction between the characters. At about this time, another floor of the school also opens up, with the important addition of a chem lab. This lab contains lots of nutritious vitamins and ingredients, which Sakura is quick to point out can be used to make a high-quality protein drink. There also happens to be a section of this lab that has a bunch of poisonous chemicals, and I'm sure that both of these facts are totally unimportant to the rest of this story. There's also some stuff with Alter Ego, who wants to be jacked into the mainframe of the school so that he can solve all the mysteries and save the day. It's a dangerous mission, but you decide to take Alter Ego to the hidden restroom area that is clearly not that much of a secret, and hope for the best after hooking him up to the grid. After this, Sakura dies. She dies alone in a room that was completely barricaded from the inside, so there's this whole big mystery of how that could possibly be, and I mean, we know how this game works by now. There's a bunch of clues you gotta collect and theories about what happened that are probably not true, you know, the works. I personally came up with about 3 theories on what happened from the outset. The first is that she was poisoned, and while that is correct, I was wrong because I thought that she had already actually been poisoned about a day or so before her death because she'd mentioned being sore and aching from a scuffle she had with Monokuma, and this was after the chem lab was unlocked, so I thought that that was just an excuse or something, or what she thought had happened. The other 2 were that either Hina did it, which I had almost no cause to believe other than the fact that these 2 characters were super duper best friends at this point, and it would be dramatic and unexpected if some crazy circumstance led to Hina mercy killing her friend or something, and what seemed like the most likely answer being that Sakura killed herself. And yes, Sakura killed herself. She pretty much did so as a way to get out of being Monokuma's spy without causing harm to any of the other students, which is what he said would happen if she defied him. Gonna move on to the next chapter though, because I don't really have much to say about this case, and I really got my murder analysis game on quite a bit with the first part of this video already. And this point marks a shift in the story towards the endgame, where all the big mysteries are answered. Sakura's death strengthens the resolve of the group to resist the point of the whole scenario and instead defeat the mastermind behind it all directly. Even Byakuya is in on this plan, which I really would not have expected, but I actually think is pretty awesome that his character seems like maybe he won't end up being an antagonist after all. Even with Sakura being her own murderer though, Monokuma insists on destroying somebody as punishment in the trial as always. So after a tense couple moments where you're wondering which of your friends are going to get wasted, you see that in actuality this is Monokuma's way of revealing that he found out about the whole alter ego thing. God damn it, game, you really gonna make me go through this again? Was once not enough for you? Well, joke's on you, I don't even care anymore. Yeah, I have the empathetic memory of a goldfish, my man. I don't give a damn about any character that hasn't been on screen in the last 5 minutes. And also, that's a computer program, not a real person. I don't care what you say, Danganronpa. Do your worst. Okay, I'll admit, this is a little sad though. So, yeah, Chapter 5 at first seems like it's gonna— oh wait, and Hina, I'm sorry, but you've dropped down the power rankings quite a bit at this point. Trying to kill all of your friends is not okay. I know all of the characters in this game are gonna forget about this and move on, but fuck you, I didn't do a damn thing to anybody since I got here, especially to your friend Sakura, so chill out, dude. Yeah, so Chapter 5 at first seems like it's going to continue on with the formula of the rest of the game, but it turns out to all just be a big setup for the final moments instead. Right away, we are told that there's one other person that's been at the school the whole time, a mysterious 16th student. Shortly afterwards, we have Makoto retiring to his room because he feels sick or something. In his bed, a couple hours later, he wakes up to see the masked character from earlier peering over him with a knife, but he just kind of falls asleep again for some reason, and wakes up another time to see Kyoko over his bed instead. This is pretty weird because as far as I remember, Makoto wasn't drugged or sedated or anything, he actually was just feeling sick. Now, I personally have never woken up to see a masked person in my locked room peering over me with a knife, so I guess I don't have any grounds to speak, and I'm sure that, yeah, it's probably not a big deal or anything. Certainly not as important as catching some extra Z's anyway, right? I mean, don't sweat the small stuff. The next morning, a body is found in the garden. And yeah, there's a garden now, but I've decided not to go over details like this anymore, so just stick with me here. Kyoko is also absent for the entire investigation of what appears to be the murder of the mysterious student that visited you at night, and also clubbed you over the head that one time. Everything proceeds pretty much as you're used to until you actually get to the trial to conclusively call out the victim and the murderer. Here, the game really tries to pull you into voting for Kyoko as the killer, but towards the end of the trial there's a moment where you can choose to trust her and withhold information that only you knew about her, which is that she has access to essentially a super key that can unlock any door in the school. If you choose to have faith in her when she tells you that this whole trial is a trap and that she's not the murderer, then you're voted on as the culprit, but instead of being executed like anybody else, you're saved at the very last moment by alter ego. Okay, so couple things here. This moment of alter ego, like being a virus or hacking the school or whatever just happened, is only very briefly explained. In fact, you know what the theme for the rest of this video is? It's gonna be explanation. A lot of what I have to say about the ending to this game involves how it explains the different aspects of what has actually occurred in the story and to these characters as well. So, explanation. For example, this alter ego thing. Alter ego just shows up out of nowhere, hacks the giant contraption to prevent you from being smashed, and disappears from the story forever afterwards. This is explained with one line. The stupid virus is gone now. Yes, of course, this virus that you discovered with the rest of us about 2.5 seconds ago, created by the ultimate programmer. I mean, why wouldn't it be? So now we're just chilling at the bottom of this trash pit or whatever, and Kyoko shows up to rescue us with that master key I'd mentioned earlier. And we have now officially transitioned to the endgame zone, where murders and trials don't matter anymore because now the only mysteries we care about are our characters' pasts and what truly happened at this school. A lot of information starts coming at you pretty fast at this point in the game, so I'm gonna try and sum it up as best I can. So Kyoko mentioned earlier that she had amnesia and couldn't remember who she really was, but she can now because investigating certain rooms just kind of jogged her memory, I guess. But more importantly, her memory loss was in fact caused by the mastermind directly. She was very concerned about this memory loss of hers, which is why she's off running around investigating on her own for most of the game, trying to find out more about the school and herself. She originally came to Hope's Peak Academy to confront the headmaster of the school, her father. So cool. That's who Kyoko is, that's what Kyoko is about. Now it's time to confront Monokuma directly. After a little convincing, appealing to Monokuma's sense of obligation to follow the rules that he himself had set, and also pointing out to him that cheating and executing students on his own out of fear that they would discover too much about him and his plans would be seen as proof that the power of hope was something that he feared and thought could topple his empire built on the idea of despair. Especially since he'd been broadcasting this whole thing to an audience of people. Which, by the way, the whole thing has been being broadcast to an audience of people, just so you know. And so, yes, he accepts the challenge, and so begins the final trial. Now, there's this big, long, complicated mystery involving the identity of the 16th mass student that was found dead earlier, like you might expect from a game about going around and solving mysteries and everything. But to make a long story short, it was somebody named Mukuro, who is considered one half of the duo that constructed the idea of forcing all these students into the killing game with each other to begin with. She was actually killed much earlier though by the other member of the duo and the character that's been controlling the Monokuma dolls since the very beginning. That person, the ultimate mastermind behind everything that's happened so far, is of course Junko. Yeah, Junko. You know, the fashion star and character that was killed on like day one out of nowhere. Yeah, her. Only not that person that you met and was killed on like day one out of nowhere. That would be crazy. No. That was obviously somebody just pretending to be Junko, of course. Like I said, it's complicated. But we get to meet the real Junko at this point, and it's here that we learn everything that's happened. But it's also here that I want to mention one more time the concept of explanations and the unknown. In these final moments of the game, there's still a lot that's actually not explained with varying degrees of being unsatisfactory, I thought. The first being that we never learn anything about the motives of Junko and her partner. Not a thing. We see that she's pretty much completely insane and consumed with an obsession for despair and causing despair and all things despair, but we have no idea why. She's shown to be incredibly bored with life, I guess, so much so that she's even bored with being herself, so she jumps from personality to personality every couple seconds. And I feel like it would be very difficult for somebody that's just crazy for no real reason to have such a persistence in coming up with the scenario to trap her fellow students in, and then follow through with it. We also know that she was, in fact, a normal student up until just 2 years ago, and it seems like her life was pretty relatively mundane until that point too, which just leads you to wonder exactly what happened to her and what led to the circumstances of her being the person that she is today. So that's an example of something that's not very satisfying, I would say. On the other hand, an example of something that does not necessarily suffer from being kept vague, at least for now, are the details of what exactly happened outside. You see, you may have thought that you were playing a wacky high school mystery game, but in reality you've pretty much been playing the origin story for a character in the Fallout universe. The outside world has been completely destroyed, and the entire game is taking place in a sort of post-apocalyptic setting, and that's all that we know. And I don't blame the game for going into such limited detail about this aspect of the setting either. I don't think that this information is ultimately very important, because it's only used as minor framing for the situation at hand in this particular story, and just the core concept is all you really need to know to understand how everything happened the way it did. So it ends up being kind of this cool reveal that suddenly puts the game into a bit of a different perspective, and whets your appetite for another game in the series to see exactly how this new information will change things. I did want to know more at the time, but that's mostly because they show or imply kind of a teeny tiny bit of what happened to end the world. But what they show is extremely confusing and weird, like giant Monokumas destroying cities and famous world landmarks being altered in his image. So you're just like, what? The reason that nobody in this story remembers the world ending is, you guessed it, they were all brainwashed just like Kyoko. They were all actually originally classmates in the real Hope Speak Academy, and the intro of the game where Makoto explains being picked to attend the school actually did happen, and he enjoyed a normal school life there for a couple of years until the world ended, where he and his friends had these memories erased by Junko so that they could be placed in this experiment of sorts. Which brings me to another example of something being woefully unexplained. How did everyone's memory get erased? That's it, that's my question. And the game doesn't even touch on this, they don't even take a glance in the general direction of answering this question. As always though, I really dug how the game left clues as to what was actually happening the whole time. Like the magazines I mentioned earlier, the air purifier, characters hearing strange noises from outside the school, which turned out to be people watching the broadcast of this killing game and trying to rescue the students only to be gunned down on the premises. It's cool stuff, and even better, the game resists the temptation to flashback to all of these hints to show off how clever it was being, which I appreciate. So, while I do have some fairly sizable complaints about this ending, I actually did come away from it feeling pretty positively. It's cool that the ultimate bad guy was somebody that you already knew, even if there was no real way you could have guessed that was the case. And most of the plot twists here were interesting and enjoyable, and I didn't expect so many characters to survive either, but that's cool too. Especially that these specific characters made it to the end, which was a big surprise for me, Kyoko and Makoto excluded, of course. I was incredibly wrong with my predictions on pretty much every character's fate, which kept things lively, and I like that. So, ultimately, in the final showdown, our hero and super genius Makoto instills in everyone else the value of hope, when Junko's ultimate goal was to leave them in a pit of despair. Even if his grand speech to everyone else in their moment of need is literally just, "Don't lose hope now, guys!" Extremely inspiring as always, Makoto. But it works, and Junko, true to her word and to her Twisted Games rules, allows herself to be executed and to experience ultimate despair. I mean, obviously, can't you tell? Just gaze upon the visage of somebody experiencing true despair. What a weird fucking game. And so, our heroes, the survivors of Hope Speak Academy, choosing to hold on to hope that the outside world, as bad as it may be, will offer a future for them worth experiencing over living inside the school forever, finally unlock the front doors to the school, ready to step outside and see the real world for themselves.